Today we have a bumper podcast. We're making some changes to the internet seriously in the coming weeks as we prepare to move into a new studio and widen the scope of our discussions. So for the big topic today, we're switching the interview chair to Emily, who will quiz Mark and I about our technical work at the Global Signal Exchange, a new initiative headed up by Google, the Global Anti-Scam Alliance and our own company, Oxford Information Labs, to help in the fight against scams and fraud. This is the Internet Seriously. Watcher, so for today, the last time in this central chair, I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford as usual, and as an engineer I've been working with my colleague, lifetime colleague, I think over 2 decades, Mark Robertshaw, setting up a new initiative with others called the Global Signal Exchange. And we thought we'd start with this podcast as we develop it, digging into these deeper technical issues and topics. And actually, we wanted to talk about our work because we're going to be focusing on that for the near future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucian, for letting me ask the questions today, and it's great to have Mark along as well. I think so my name is Emily Taylor, and I am the Chief Executive of Oxford Information Labs and also a co-founder of the Global Signal Exchange. Unlike Mark and Lucian, I'm not from a technical background. I'm a legal and policy person, and you know, maybe at some point in the future we can have a big nerd out on how difficult it is to actually do the legalities of cross-border data flows and build confidence. But for today, I hope we can talk just some basics about what the Global Signal Exchange is and hear from both of you about, you know, current work, current pilots, but also the technical side of it and what is involved in delivering such a large platform.
Yes, and I'm Mark. It's great to be here today. As Emily's mentioned, I've been working alongside Lucian particularly for the last 23 years now.
I think
and
so.
With Emily for about the last Emily for about the last 15 or so.
You don't look old enough to be working anywhere.
Well, thank you for that. So my role as Chief Operating Officer of the Global Signal Exchange and Oxford Information Labs, very much overseeing the delivery of the platform that we develop for those products, and really excited today to be able to talk more about that.
Thank you. Before I hand over to Emily, if you are listening to this or following this on YouTube and others, please like or share. You can see our tags and identifiers just below Mark there, and also ask your smart speaker to play the podcast, The Internet Seriously. Emily, over to you.
Oh, well, thank you, Luce. So let's do a bit of level setting. What is the Global Signal Exchange?
Yeah, the Global Signal Exchange is a new, what they call global clearinghouse for the exchange of scam and threat intelligence. We support all signal types in this exchange. For example, domain names, URLs, IP addresses, and we have secure channels for personal identifiable information, things like bank accounts, bank numbers, email addresses, and more.
So just loads to unpack there. What's a signal? You've talked about it being different data. You've talked a list of different data types, so it's clear that it's not just one thing. Well, why signal?
Yeah, I think it's important to differentiate between signals, which are potentially low quality intelligence from different people who aren't necessarily themselves threat reporters. So they might be a member of the public who really can't differentiate between something that's annoying, like spam, and something that's harmful or misleading, like scams and the beginning of a fraud attack. And so what we're doing is we're trying to make an environment that's very open to everybody to share things they're worried about, and to have others as a community verify those, what we call signals. So we call them signals because they're not kind of hard evidence that would stand up in court, but we need those early hints at things that may be bad so we can differentiate between the bad and the good.
Mark, just coming to you, why would anybody, what's the point of intelligence sharing or signal sharing? Why do people think that this is the right thing to do to fight scams and fraud? Can you just help us make the links?
Yeah, I think a number of different reasons why people would want to do this, but primarily, I think the more information we share together, particularly, the more action can be taken quickly. And we're currently in an environment where, sadly, it's a bit about whack-a-mole. And we're hoping that over the coming sort of months and years, we'll see the landscape shift, and there'll be more of a sort of consolidated approach to solving this problem, across the world. But at the moment, a lot of it's about having access to the right information as quickly as possible, so you can take action.
Lucian, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, if you look at other areas where signal sharing occurs, obviously in threats of war, you're going to observe things you're worried about. It may be a flock of birds, it may be incoming missiles. If you think about child protection laws, there were actually what's called safeguarding signal sharing requirements put in place following harm to children. There was quite a particular case that was quite prolific. And there you found that a lot of parties who had knowledge had access to a lot of what they call signals, but they didn't have the full picture. And it was by combining the full picture that you were able to determine that something bad was happening, not any single part. And also things like the aircraft industry. Pilots are required to relay signals about possible bad weather and things like that. It may or may not be, but you're just required to relay it to help others make a determination.
So nobody sees the full picture, and joining up those bits of information can really be helpful. Mark, the Global Signal Exchange hit a big milestone over the weekend. Tell us what that was, and technically, tell us a bit about how you, as Chief Operating Officer, enable the platform to stand up to scale and speed.
Yeah, so we're very excited to say that we've crossed the 1 billion signal mark this weekend. So having started with just 40 million signals at the beginning of the year, we've now grown sort of 25-fold up to 1 billion signals, which I think has been a surprise to many of us that the growth has been that good in such a short period of time. But it is a real testament, I think, to the people we've got working with us and their sort of commitment to sharing at that sort of scale. As you mentioned, we have designed a platform from the ground up to be an at-scale platform. We've used highly provisionable cloud resources to make it possible to both scale performantly, but also used, I guess, the best of our technical sort of abilities to ensure that things are well indexed, which is a term we would use for being able to retrieve data quickly. And also that even with large scale, we're still able to provide a performance that our users need. So we're delighted.
If I was a golden retriever, could you just explain to me what cloud gives you? Say the old style server under your desk wouldn't.
Absolutely. I think what we've moved into now over the last sort of 10 or 15 years is a kind of I guess a completely different way of provisioning resources, where before we were constrained by having to run our own servers, as you say, buying our own servers even and installing them. Then capacity was always limited. Now we work with these big operators who are basically operating them at scale for us. And what that means is that you can provision new resources within seconds rather than having to order a server, get a new one into the rack. And so that's completely changed the game. And I think effectively we're working now with a pool of practically unlimited resources at our disposal.
And so for a small business, for a small organisation, that gives a sort of a great big, back office, if you like, in terms of data storage and data processing, right? Yes. Lucian, you wanted to say something?
I just
couldn't
don't know.
Resist.
I just don't know a single golden retriever that would understand that.
I don't think I do, but actually golden retrievers are incredibly intelligent. Just putting it out there. So Mark's told us about the billion threat signals milestone. Lucian, can you talk about who is working with the Global Signal Exchange and how many organisations there are kind of in the pipeline, on the platform and so on, and some of the names that are involved?
Yes, well, the Global Signal Exchange is a not-for-profit. We established it in January last year, 2025. We're now working with 178 organisations. I can't name them all. I can talk by type because some of them are in our onboarding and contracting pipeline. But they do include 4 of the big tech platforms. That's Google, Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. And as Mark was saying, we've got access to really fantastic cloud services, but also engineers on their side who have helped us extensively with security, validating and assessing our system and our platform. And but I want to say the need for a cross-border, cross-sector signal sharing platform wasn't just an idea of big tech. It was identified by a multi-stakeholder group, including banks, government, data suppliers, and the big tech at what we call the Global Anti-Scam Summit. That was in Lisbon 2023. The summit organizer there, the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, and Google joined forces to try and identify a partner. And it's one of the proudest moments in our life, I think, where we were identified with our experience in cyber intelligence, projects with the government, deep know-how of the internet and its technology, and also a great big set of software libraries that we developed over 20 years, which were easily repurposed and adapted to form the heart of the GSE services.
So is it just big tech that are involved?
Well, no, I've talked about 178 organisations. I've named 4 big tech, so there are 174 organisations.
So what sort of sectors are we talking about?
We're talking about the sectors that we are in talks with are bodies from the finance sector, payment gateway providers, governments, businesses, data sharers and security organisations themselves. Can you think of any others, Mark?
I think also law enforcement is quite a big one for us as well at the moment. But yes, I mean, I think the great thing about the GSE is how broad it is in terms of the reach across sectors, and that's really key to us seeing, our mission fulfilled, to sort of see this problem space getting better.
Yeah. So one of the things that the Global Signal Exchange does is some pilots. We're going to talk in a second about the malvertising pilot with Lucian. But first of all, Mark, tell us about league tables. What are they? What's the idea behind them? And what's coming up? What have we got and what's coming up?
So one of the mantras we often use is make it a sport. And what we believe firmly is that people respond well to sort of competitive challenge. And one of the purposes of what we call league tabling, or leaderboards, another term for it, is to actually look at the supply chain in particular for those that are facilitating the setting up of scam infrastructure, and looking to sort of rank them according to which ones are facilitating the most scams and those that are facilitating the least scams, and encouraging people to actually see their position change for the better.
So when you say facilitating, do you mean that these organisations are deliberately helping scammers or something else?
It can be a bit of a mixture, but I think predominantly they're not deliberately doing it, but they are. I mean, a good example might be looking at the domain name supply chain. You've got people who accept registrations for domain names. They may not be checking out their customers as adequately as they should be, not doing enough know your customer checks, and therefore allowing scammers to very easily use their platforms. Now, we believe they have a responsibility to do better at that. They may not themselves be intrinsically bad, but they're allowing bad people to use their platforms and to sort of set up infrastructure via their channels.
So what league tables have we got, and what's coming up?
So currently we started with the domain name industry. It's an industry that we know particularly well. So we started with effectively the highest point in the chain, which is the what we call the domain registries, who are the people that effectively technically run domain names at the lowest level. So the sort of extensions of domain names, things like .com, .net, .org, would be run typically by those registries. And we've actually ranked those top-level domains and looked at which ones are, by our measurement, are supporting the most abuse, and those that are supporting the least abuse effectively on their platforms.
Is that how you would put it, Luce?
Well, I think our thing is celebrating the best. We're not trying to point the finger and say, if you're at the bottom of the league table, somehow avoid you, or that's bad. It might be organisations or registries that themselves are victims of attack that they don't know yet. And so what we're trying to do is bring that to life. So we look at the league tables and we say, if you're at the top of the league table, you are attracting the fewest threat reports. And that's all we're saying. We're not saying that you're good or bad. We're just saying we're getting an awful lot of reports with your names on it. At the top of the table, we're not getting many reports with your name on it. What is it that you are doing as an organisation to deter the scammers? What are we doing? What are you doing as an organisation that attracts the scammers? And what's the difference? And is there anything you can do in your organisation to move yourself up the league tables and improve your position?
So are we sure that every single data point in the GSE absolutely relates to a scam or fraud or a bad activity? Because you were talking about sharing quite low level or low confidence type of things, just sharing.
Yeah, this goes back, I'll let Mark pick this up, but this goes back to my first point. This is signal sharing. And what we're doing is we're working with as many organisations as possible to help verify and cross-examine and cross-check those signals. So if you've got a signal reported by a consumer and no one else, you might just observe that signal. That signal may be a website or an bank account number or something. If other people are reporting the same, you might do a bit more than observe it. So in fact, the whole system is a massive verification system.
Yeah, thanks. Anything on that, Mark?
I think just to add that, the other thing that we strongly encourage on our platform is the giving of feedback. And actually that we think that's really key. And I think as Lucian's alluded as well, we can receive a report from somebody, but actually it's when somebody else either confirms that report and says, yes, I've also seen that, or indeed reports that they've taken action against something, that then tells you and confirms to you that something was a problem retrospectively as well. So I think that sort of interaction with signals, not just simply receiving signals and sending them out, but also expecting there to be some response to that as well.
Yeah,
it's really key.
And one of the things that I've been hearing, sometimes an organisation will sort of consume a load of signals and go, well, actually, we had already observed those.
Yeah.
But in a way, that's also valuable, isn't it? Because it means that their own systems are adequately detecting them. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we measure two measures, actually. We call them uplift and overlap, which are relevant to this. And overlap is when more than one person sees the same signal, and it acts as confirmation. And you're absolutely right that we think that's really key to sort of strengthening signals, but also getting a sense of which signals amongst the morass that we do receive are stronger than others. So that sense of, but also equally, new information is useful too. So we very much look at the picture that way. But as we said already, we hope that by receiving as much feedback as possible on our signals, we'll actually get a bigger picture and strengthen.
And the new signals is what you're calling uplift.
Uplift, that's right.
So that's something you didn't know before.
Correct.
And the overlap is when you've already seen it, but two people seeing the same thing is actually quite interesting, isn't it? Lucian, tell me about some of the pilots that you've been doing, and particularly there's one on malvertising. Could you just do a bit of scene setting? What do we mean by malvertising? And, why do this? And what have the results been?
Yes, I mean, we have a number of initiatives that we've done in the first year. We've provided free services for police, free services for those who want to share data only. And we're now publishing 54 feeds of different intelligence sources for people to use. And what we've been doing is trying to work with smaller groups as well. I mentioned at the beginning that we run services that protect personal identifiable information. And I think that's important, that we don't just work very broadly. We have a broad signal sharing place called the marketplace, where we sort of publish for everyone who's accredited with the global signal exchange. And our accreditation and governance is another whole topic which I'm not going to cover today. But so we've got this broader data sharing environment, and then we can narrow that into tactical pilots. And you've mentioned one is called the Malvertising Project. I haven't got a clue where that name came from, but it's basically the advertising industry focusing on malware, evil things that are happening, and basically exploitation of their platforms.
So you're an internet user, you see an advert, it's telling you to a get rich quick scheme or some sort of investment or some sort of opportunity, and you click on that, and that takes you to a scam site, and that is what's called malvertising. So there is an advertising asset, and that often has a call to action that's leading you somewhere else. Is that what you mean?
Yes, it typically takes you what they call off-platform. It might be to a false site. So the scammer is, using weaknesses, what we call weaknesses in the internet as a supply chain, to enable fraud at scale, and the criminals may register reassuring domain names that sound like something they're familiar with, a shop, a hospital service, a government, host professional looking fake websites, and they may advertise then those websites as seemingly legitimate services and target victims through other things like messaging services. So we've been working in the malvertising space, which people are very interested in these sort of silos of attack, and one scam topic is all around advertising. It's a hot topic at the moment, and trying to work with professionals in those spaces to see whether there's anything pertinent and anything more that we can do. And we've had the fortune of working with two of the biggest advertising platforms on the planet, that is Amazon and Google, and we've been working together with fantastic help from the Advertising Association. And I've got to give a big shout out to Conrad Scheck from that organisation, who's been very much the driver for getting these two giants together and helping them work with the global signal exchange. And we've just completed phase 1 of that pilot.
Great. And so I want to come to you, Mark, bring you in on this and tell us about part of what was done in the phase 1, if I'm right, Lucian, was agreeing common taxonomies. What is a taxonomy? Why is it important? And why is it difficult for people to agree?
So I guess in simple terms, a taxonomy is a mechanism of describing data in a consistent manner. So normally that means a simple example might be that you've got like an object with some attributes effectively assigned to it. So you might have, a teapot has a colour, has a size, has a shape, the kind of things you'd see on Amazon, I guess, when you're buying things, those kind of classifications and sort of attributes. The very same can be applied to signals. And in a malvertising space, there'll be some particular attributes that will be of interest. It might be who the advertiser was. It might be some sort of identifier which they're using, which is a common identifier they'll use for adverts. It might be other aspects of that. And what's really important when you're exchanging data, particularly within sectors, is that you talk the same language and you describe things in the same way so that you can, when you're exchanging data, it makes sense and that you can correlate the data well amongst yourselves. So one of the things we've done in a GSE is design it in a very flexible manner so that you can create these custom taxonomies in a sector-specific way, which then mean that people can talk that common language.
And so that taxonomy, Lucian, will allow somebody to put data in and somebody else to take that data out and know how it fits together with their own systems too.
That's right. And what's funny is that we proposed a straw man taxonomy at the beginning of the malvertising exercise, in fact, at the beginning of all pilot exercises. And we basically said, look, we're going to get very geeky, we're going to do a database dictionary type description of what we're looking for, and we put that in what we call JSON format, so it's as an object where we basically have labels for things and they can insert the data values against those labels. We suggested things like date first reported, type of abuse, the signal itself, which may be a URL, it has to fit a certain pattern, and optional things like a confidence score, and what we call other data attributes, which are really important to append to a signal. If you want to share other facts as an industry, you may have geeky things that you and another industry partner may understand. There's space for that. So we said, guys, here's this, let's just get working with this. And it's funny working with big engineers on their side. It's like, we just like working and we'll standardize later. And actually, I don't think anybody, apart from suggesting little tweaks and things, I don't think anybody, would you agree, Mark, has really challenged the basic pattern that we've been proposing there.
No, definitely not. And I think actually the great thing about the signal exchange is that it has a what we call core taxonomy, which is a sort of set of fields that Lucian's described, which for most use cases is sufficient for the exchange of signals. And that ability to add additional attributes as and when required, sort of for those specific sector requirements, is really key. But yes, we found it to be lightweight, and that's kind of what people want these days.
So people don't need to kind of go to university and learn about computer programming to participate in the
heavens,
GSE.
No.
We in fact most of the engineers, as they're testing the platform, figuring out what to do, are literally uploading spreadsheets.
Right, okay.
So you can get started on that, and then when you're really comfortable and you want to work at scale, you work with the engineers that really know what they're doing and talk to an API, which is what we offer everyone. So we've had this.
Tell me about this. Let's drill down into what's happened. So you've mentioned two huge advertising platforms, Amazon and Google, and you said that there has been an exchange of signals. Why is that significant? How much was it, and what happened?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, we've concluded a signal exchange pilot via the Global Signal Exchange, which was initiated and overseen by the Advertising Association in the UK, pardon me, aims to showcase that sharing actionable threat intelligence is feasible and delivers positive impact in the form of new insights and faster response in order to strengthen the collective defense against scams. And I'm picking out things that our partners have been saying, and particularly Google and Amazon, about that whole event. It's a significant milestone. It shows that large online platforms can take this problem very seriously and are trialing new effective ways of sharing actionable threat intelligence to keep users safe. They say the GSE, I'm proud to say, plays a critical role in enabling that real-time signal sharing across sectors and geographies, and which allows people, those organisations, to exchange information in a secure and privacy-preserving manner. You specifically asked for the facts. Well, as part of the pilot, Amazon shared over 100 domain names of various types, such as cloaking, malware, and phishing, impersonation, and scams, with Google. And Google received those signals, detected new campaigns, which enable it to protect and track those closer, adjusting its models while sharing 500 plus URLs indicative of malware back to Amazon. So, in fact, a big technical conversation. And now the next step is expanding the pilot to now welcoming other groups, because we've got something that really works and has proven to work without noise of lots of participating stakeholders. And then we're welcoming now comments from other advertisers and others from the advertising industry.
So, Mark, a couple of things on that. So, one of the aspects that really interested me about this malvertising experiment, very small number of signals, and that's really a proof of concept, right? Indeed. Isn't it? It's just like, can we do this? But both of these huge platforms that one thinks of as seeing everything, knowing everything, they both came back and said that was all new to us. What we got from the other person, from the other organisation, was new. So is that something we've heard before in the GSE when we've been doing these experiments?
I think it is, and I think one of the things that we're very aware of is that we only, even now with our billion signals, we only see a small percentage of the problem. I mean, we're probably, not even seeing, 5-10% of the problem, and so I think even these huge platforms that see the wealth data they have, there's still significant uplift they provide to each other, and that's, I think, very key to this. And we're very aware that in order for this kind of interaction to be effective, there's a need for there to be new information in the mix as well. And I think very much so we're seeing that as a pattern in all the various pilots we've been operating.
Lucian?
These organisations have access to huge amounts of threat intelligence and resources to look at that. In this small pilot, both sides observed 100% new information from each other. So these giants do not see it all. And that was a very small exercise. If you scale that up, there's a lot that even the giants are not seeing, because don't forget, they've got their communities. They may be huge, they may be very popular, but other people are accessing the internet somewhere else.
Yes. And we also see, don't we, and people report that the scammers are deliberately drawing people, their victims, across numerous services and platforms that are all operated by different people. And part of that is surely to evade that detection, because people are, those organisations, they know a lot in their silos. They know what they know, but they don't know what they don't. Mark, we've talked about common taxonomies, which sounds like very computer 101, but with such a large amount of data in the system, can you talk a little bit about how the GSE is using artificial intelligence to sort of pull out themes and trends and some intelligence from these data signals?
Absolutely. I think once you've got a data base the size that we now have with signals, there's a lot you can do, and you also enhance, I think, by using modern AI tools. There's two sort of broad themes that we're using AI for at the moment. One is to categorize our signals. That's quite an important part of what we do. That involves looking at the signals we're getting and attempt to sort of pull out which ones match, I guess, certain sectors, for example, which ones would be to do with, retail, finance, other sort of sectors, industry sectors. We also use it for classification of other areas of our business, looking at, for example, things like groupings of people, groupings such as vulnerable people groupings. We use that in one of our research projects. We pull out signals that refer to maybe targeting elderly people, younger people, and there's lots you can get now by looking at sort of and using AI to do that work for us. It's very powerful. Another really important aspect of AI for us increasingly is in mining the large database that we have. And actually, there's a level you can offer our customers ourselves directly in terms of data intelligence, but actually allowing our users to themselves query the data using these days kind of common, LLM type questions that many of us use LLMs frequently for asking about questions of life. You can actually start to use those LLMs to ask questions of our data, which much more match your own requirements and your own needs as somebody consuming our data.
An LLM is a large language model.
Large language model,
right? And that's sort of what would be examples?
So things such as ChatGPT and Gemini, which I think we're largely all familiar with these days, and offering a very friendly interface for asking questions. We're moving much more towards offering that kind of support to our customers as well.
Thank you. So final question for you, Lucian. We've just passed our first anniversary of the Global Signal Exchange. Over the coming year ahead, what are you hoping we will show impact for, and particularly for the malvertising project and pilot? What are you hoping for in terms of impact?
I think I'm looking for the same thing with any group that we're talking to. So a finance group, there's one where we're going to do a publishing scams pilot as well. We're working with police and law enforcement, and malvertising, particularly the advertising community, where scammers are very easily buying blocks of adverts. They may buy 1 million adverts on a Saturday morning, hoping that engineers are not working. I've heard of engineers who are staying, getting out of bed on early Saturday morning to squash scams on their platforms and stuff. So I hope that at the end of year one, we've got a larger community from those bodies, that more are coming together to share their threat intelligence, because then we'll have a real grasp of the actual problem. I don't think anybody on the planet is seeing the scale and the threat intelligence. The more we get, the more we'll get a grasp of the actual problem. So sadly, what that means is, I think, that the appearance of scams and fraud is going to go up, but I think that will be just realer. So what I'm really excited about is what happens at the end of, beyond that community coming together. And don't forget, we'll be working all the time to provide intelligence and sharing that brings down scams and fraud. But at the end of the second year, I would want to see significant reduction in scams and fraud being reported, particularly those crimes in the context of a group, for example, facilitated by advertising.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. So that's the end of this section. Lucian, I'm just going to hand back to you now.
Thank you very much. That was the Internet Seriously, with a new twist on our podcast where we're actually moving to talking about more expert topics and really broadening the scope of the things we're talking about to cover more geeky, deeper topics around cyber. Really, cyber everything, I'd say. So for the big topic today, we switched the interview chair to the fantastic Emily, who was quizzing Mark and I in detail about our technical work at the Global Signal Exchange, which is a new initiative, really exciting, headed up by Google and the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, and our own company, Oxford Information Labs, to help in the fight against scams and fraud. Before I go, if you've been listening to this, we'll focus on one of my two colleagues. Please like, follow or share. We picked on Emily this time. We had Mark at the beginning. Our handles on our various social channels, and also if you're near a speaker, just say play the podcast, The Internet Seriously. Ta-ta.